Our reporter Spencer Joseph standing by for us. He was at that press conference held in Oroville. Spencer, what's the latest?
Thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, that press conference just ended. I'm joined now with CAL FIRE Chief Scholen. Chief, tell me a little bit about what we heard inside and what the latest is on the fire.
So the latest on the fire, we're still at 18,000. I'm sure it's grown since our meeting we just had in that room by a couple thousand acres. The fire is, we're not able to engage in perimeter control at this point because we are actively saving civilians' lives right now. And as we transition and take care of those civilians, then we'll look at structured defense and those sort of things. The fire is moving in a number of directions. It's established itself into the Butte Creek Canyon and drainage there, so we're concerned about the winds and where they'll push that fire in that area. It's progressed out of the town of Paradise down towards the Butte College, if you will, Butte Valley area, so we have some concerns with where we can catch it down on that end. We still have fire actively growing up into the Concow area and spreading out into the outskirts of the wilderness up in there. So we have a number of locations and fronts that we're trying to get resources into, but right now civilian rescue is our #1 priority. Please heed the evacuation warnings and mandatory evacuations that have been posted by the Sheriff's Office. And if you are on the outskirts where those warnings are being posted, prepare yourself. Think about it tonight. Now is the time to have your stuff ready to move. This fire is moving very rapidly. It grew in about 2,000 acres in less than 40 minutes on initial response.
And so we talk about other fires that we've had in Northern California. Obviously, this is incredibly serious, much more serious than a lot of other fires. What makes this one so aggressive and move so rapidly?
So we looked at our conditions, and red flag warnings were been posted over the last 24 to 48 hours. Those conditions came to light this morning, and with our typical winds that we do see out of the Jarbo Gap drainage there, those winds were prevalent this morning, sustained at 18 miles an hour up to 40 miles an hour gusts. So with the fire location where it started, access was extremely difficult to get into it rapidly. It allowed it to grow. The fuels are very dry because we obviously haven't had a precipitation, and we don't have any precipitation in the next 7-day outlook. So that those conditions and the terrain fed the fire with the available timber and brush model that was out there, and it was rapid fire growth. We've seen this unfortunately before, 2008. It's a very similar footprint to the fires we've had in Concow before, and nature repeats itself, and that's where we're at today.
And so, I mean, we're here in Oroville, and the wind is still exceptionally high, gusting. In fact, the fire is off in that direction from us and blowing this way. So I guess the next question I would have is who should be ready? And we talked about it a little bit in the press conference, but who should be preparing their stuff and packing their stuff?
The warnings that are being posted here shortly, if they haven't already been by the Sheriff's Office, will identify those communities reaching out beyond the core of the actual fire damage right now, which is essentially the town of Paradise. And then when we look up into the Magalia area, we have the Concow people. Those are all in the core. Those are mandatory evacuations. Warnings are going to be going out further out, and those specifics will be found on the Butte County Sheriff's website. And that's where they need to go, so that I don't steer you folks in the wrong way.
And final question for you is, in terms of how these first responders save lives and track people, obviously that's their first priority, but how do they look for that, and how do they get to some of these areas to save these lives? And talk me through what the mind of a first responder is out there.
So resources respond in, obviously, when there's emergency, when everyone's trying to leave. And so there's a lot of instances that I've heard throughout the day as our fire engines and sheriffs and police officers are going in. Folks are getting stuck on the road, trapped just outside of their homes trying to evacuate. So firefighters, I know for sure, have taken folks refuge in their fire engines and transported them. They've taken refuge, deployed their personal fire shelters that protect them with civilians and sheltered them in place along the road until the fire front moved. We've deployed our bulldozers to clear roadways, cars off the road in order to get access into people to get them out of their homes. And we've transported burn victims, civilians, out of the fire area to waiting ambulances and things. So it's really all hands on deck. This is what our folks get trained to do, and that's what they're up there doing since 6:37 this morning until now.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Appreciate you joining us.
Is there anything that people can do to protect their homes as well?
Of course, we're going to